So over the last 50 years, something huge, a massive social revolution, has been quietly happening on college campuses all over the world. It's a huge shift that you can boil down to just one pretty startling number: 57%. Just let that number hang in the air for a second. What on earth could that be about? Well, it points to a really profound and pretty recent change in our society. That's right, 57% of all bachelor's degrees in the US now go to women. And look, we're not talking about a coin toss here, a 51-49 split. This is a clear, commanding majority that signals a complete reversal of what used to be the norm in higher education. So how in the world did we get here? I mean, this wasn't some flip of a switch. It was a slow, steady, almost quiet revolution. And believe me, it goes way deeper than just that one big number. See, this isn't just about who's enrolling. It's about a massive shift in fields that used to be almost entirely male. Back in 1970, less than 1 in 10 business degrees went to women. Now, it's almost half. For law degrees, the jump was from about 5% to a solid majority. And here's a wild stat for you. In 2020, at every single one of the top 16 law schools in the US, the most prestigious student job, editor-in-chief of the Law Review, was held by a woman. Every single one. So how fast did this all go down? Let's actually chart the timeline of this campus flip, using the US as a kind of case study for this dramatic reversal. The dominoes just started falling, and they fell fast. In 1978, women took the lead in associate's degrees. Just 4 years later, bam, 1982, they overtake men in bachelor's degrees. And by 1986, they'd taken the lead across the board, earning more postgraduate degrees too. It was a complete 3-stage takeover in less than a decade. And believe it or not, that gap hasn't closed. It's actually gotten wider. Today, 3 out of every 5 master's and associate's degrees go to women. The trend that kicked off in the 80s didn't just stick around. It became the dominant reality. Okay, but what about the really tough, competitive fields? You know, we're talking doctors, dentists, lawyers. The growth there is, well, it's just mind-blowing. In 1972, only 7% of these degrees went to women. Fast forward to 2019, and that number rocketed up to 50%. 50! They reached total parity at the highest levels of professional education. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's an American thing. But nope. This campus flip is a consistent, global phenomenon that's happening all across the developed world. All right, let's take a quick trip around the world. First stop, North America. The gap is pretty stark. In Canada, there's an 18-point difference between young men and women with higher education, and the US isn't far behind with a 12-point gap. Let's hop across the Atlantic to Europe, and guess what? Same story. In the UK, an 8-point gap. Over in Norway, it's even wider at 15 points. Country after country, the pattern just repeats itself. And it's not just a Western thing either. Let's look at the super competitive academic worlds in Asia. From South Korea to Japan, young women are outpacing young men. The big takeaway here, this is a global shift. It's not some localized fluke. Just let that sink in for a moment. In every single developed nation in the OECD, young women are more educated than young men. And as far as we can tell, nobody, and I mean nobody, predicted this would happen so quickly, so completely, or so consistently all over the world. And this quote right here, this is where the story really takes a turn. We've gone from just watching this trend happen to people in power actively worrying about it. Because it begs the question, what does it actually mean for society when one gender starts to fall this far behind in education? You know, for decades, the focus was, rightly so, all about getting girls and women access to education. But now, the conversation is shifting. The script has completely flipped, and we're talking about a new inverse gender gap and the problems it might be creating.
Want to see how extreme this can get? Let's take a look at Iceland. This is the country ranked #1 in the entire world for gender equality. And there, 77% of university undergraduates are women. That's not a majority, that's an overwhelming majority.
And when you see numbers like that, you start to see why governments are getting involved. They're not just watching anymore, they're trying to do something about it. Iceland is now grappling with this huge imbalance, and in places like Scotland, they've gone even further. further, setting actual official targets to get more men into universities.
So where do we go from here?
Well, this is where it gets really complicated, because the whole picture is kind of lopsided. The efforts to close these gender gaps don't seem to be working the same in both directions. This slide right here shows a really crucial point. We have poured a ton of energy and resources into getting more women into STEM fields, science, tech, engineering, and math. And guess what? It's working. But there is no equivalent push and absolutely no equivalent progress in getting men into the traditionally female-dominated HEAL fields. That's health, education, administration, and literacy. And look, the progress for women in STEM is undeniable. The numbers don't lie. They're earning over a third of all STEM degrees, and they're clearing 40% in key areas like the physical sciences and math. That gap is definitely closing. But that same kind of progress, it's just not happening for men in those HEAL jobs. And why does this matter so much? Because experts project that these are the sectors that are going to see huge job growth in the future. So if men aren't even entering these fields, where does that leave them in the economy of tomorrow? So that's where we land. For half a century, the focus was on closing an educational gap for women, and it was a massive success. But in doing so, a new gap has opened up, this time in the other direction. And that leaves us with a really tough, really important question for the 21st century. What happens to our society, to our families, to our economy, when a large portion of men are being left behind?